Brooke Raboutou has made the second ascent of box therapy in Rocky Mountain National Park with a suggested downgrade from its original grade of V16 to V15. Now there is a caveat to that. She said that it's probably a V15, but still a hard V15. And it's worth reiterating that grades are ultimately just opinions. But before we go too deep down the grade-based rabbit hole, here's what Brooke had to say on Instagram about the experience. One of the most magical days. Last weekend, I rallied the family and we ventured out into the depths of Wild Basin. Sean and I managed to do the ultimate dream, sibling send of box therapy, same day, back-to-back tries. To have our parents behind us shuffling pads and videoing was the cherry on top. I first touched this boulder in September 2022 and I have not stopped dreaming about it since that day. It took me a whole year to get back on it, but in a few sessions I was able to stand atop of one of the most beautiful climbs I've ever done. So given how deep and meaningful the experience was for Brooke, it feels a little bit like we're cheapening it by dumbing it down and just focusing on the grade. And about the grade, Brooke had this to say. Grades are tricky because they truly are subjective and can feel different for everyone. Here's my opinion. After chatting with my brother and others who have done the climb, I feel like V15 is an appropriate grade, especially if I compare it to some of the benchmark V15s I've tested. Box Therapy's first ascensionist Daniel Woods has also come out with a comment on Instagram, reassessing his initial grade of V16. He said, like Brooke stated, grades are subjective and in the end just a guidance to see how challenging a line is. Sometimes we're off with our initial proposals. That's why consensus is key to have. I do believe box fits into the V15 category, especially after comparing it to other 16s I've tried and done. 15 is still impressive as hell to do. Royana, who also repeated the problem a few years ago, had this to say. I did it a few years ago when I didn't have as many other climbs as a reference. At the time it felt like it was harder than other 8Cs, but looking back, with more climbs to compare, it's probably more like a solid 15. Better beta, conditions, etc. play a huge role in it. Like Daniel said, it's still incredibly difficult, but in hindsight, it doesn't feel quite the same as the other 16s. Still, mad props to Brooke and Katie for sending it regardless if it's just V15, because it still nails hard. So what bearing does this have on Katie Lamb's ascent? Last month, Katie made the first female ascent of box therapy, and in doing so became the first woman to climb font 8C+, or V16. Even if box therapy does go on to settle at 8C or V15, Brooke and Katie's ascent would still rank as one of the top 5 hardest female ascents of all time. Speaking on Instagram, Katie said that it was climbing with the likes of Brooke, Ashima Shirashi, Natalia Grossman and Alex Puccio in 2020 that made her realise that this is how we get to the next level. And in a most recent post, commenting on Brooke's ascent of box therapy, she had this to say. This is evidence of that next level. Sometimes downgrades can feel like a slight. There's an emotional weight attached to them. But at the end of the day, climbing is just an incredibly subjective sport with many, many factors at play, more so than most other sports, whether that be through height or conditions or a range of other differing factors. Irrespective of whether or not box therapy is V16 or V15, these ascents are some of the most impressive ever done. And I've no doubt that both Brooke and Katie have more V16s or font 8C+ in their lives ahead of them. Continuing the theme of climbs that have received a downgrade, Yanya Gambet has repeated the new baseline, the font 8B+ in Magic Wood. This was put up in 2002 by Bernd Zangel and was supposed to represent the new baseline of font 8C. But ironically, subsequent ascents saw it settle to font 8B+. Yanya dispatched the problem in typically Yanya style, which is to say that she dispatched it pretty quickly. And she had this to say about the problem over on Instagram. I came here with no expectations. My goal of the trip was to get back climbing after a rest and climb as many different boulders as I can. Of course, I couldn't resist trying this amazing line. I checked out the moves on my first session, felt really solid and already close to sending. On the send day, I felt so tired and I doubted if I should even try it. Still, I walked up to the boulder and surprised myself with a send on my second try of the day. So psyched how quickly it went down. I'll be back soon. The new baseline is only Yanya's second HB+, and the speed in which she did it, coupled with her competition climbing pedigree, indicate that font 8C or even 8C+ can't be far away. Maybe, or perhaps even hopefully, this is something we'll see after she's done with the Olympics in Paris next year. And following on from the theme of retiring from competitions, closer to home, Tara Hayes has celebrated her own retirement by making an ascent of Fat Lip at Raven Tor, Steve McClure's font 8B. This comes after Tara had a particularly successful Rocklands trip earlier this year, and we've no doubt that now she's retired from competitions, she'll be applying all of her energy and focus onto the rock.